All right, so to talk us through what transpired and give us the perspective of the development, we've got Femi Otubanjo, who is a professor of international politics and strategic studies, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. He joins us virtually. We also do have Eze Onyekwe, who is a lawyer and lead director, Center for Social Justice. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Let me start with you, Onyekwe.
For having me.
All right, so let me start with you here in the studios. So, yes, much ado about the ministerial list. We do this every time a new government comes in. That expectation is always there. What are they likely going to come up with? So, of what significance or what strikes you with these particular nominations?
Well, I thought some of the names I saw on this list, considering the time we've been waiting, could have been announced straight from Eagle Square after the swearing in. So there was no need for almost 60 days before announcing the names of who I would call usual suspects, who have always been there and want to continue to be there. So in essence, if the president actually hit the ground running, as is said in some quarters, considering that he knew he was going to be president around March, he had March, April, and May up to 29th, and then he has added another 2 months. I think this list should have been out in the first 2 or 3 weeks of his having been sworn in. So there was a lot of time wasted in the process, and to even think of the fact that 11 states, as I saw on television now, don't even have their ministers yet, then that's a huge challenge. And if you recall, a couple of days ago, there was a report in the media that the presidency asked the resident doctors to give him more time, that he hasn't been briefed, that he's just new. And so when you look at all these things combined, you know that we should have had these ministers by middle of June or at most late June.
Well, Professor Tubanjo, considering, yes, he said he's been preparing for this, he's ready for it, he was going to do a lot to ensure that things are done properly. And there are some who think, look, from what they've seen, if some part of the list was submitted yesterday, probably to beat the deadline, who knows, if that timeline wasn't stipulated, it might have even taken way longer. So how do people relate with this? I mean, is it politics, or how do you just relate with this kind of scenario now?
Thank you very much for having me. I think we should be wary of being concerned with trivia. It is not the process, but the results. What I see is an incredible mosaic of the very best men and women. A star-studded list, a masterclass in cabinet crafting. I think that President Tinubu's record of identifying and working with the best of talents shines through magnificently. I think the list represents a balance of interests. You have compensatory interest, that is compensating those who work for the campaign. You have competence, what people call technocracy, technocrats, and you have what I would call futurology, an eye on re-election. You have to keep your constituency vibrant and alive. Some of the names there are just wonderful. You have the accomplished names like Dele Alake, Wale Edu, Lateef Fagbemi, Adebayo, Adedagu, and you have eminent technocrats like Professor Pate, Professor Hussein, Architect Yusuf, and so many of them. Well, significantly, we have 7 names, 7 women, making 25% of the list, which, of course, with 15 vacancies yet to fill, they might still be able to achieve their 35% requirement. The women appointed are not Barbie dolls. They are some of the most accomplished, distinguished women in our land. And please pardon me if I say that our president may have an eye for beautiful women at the expense of stepping on the sensitivities of gender warriors I need to say that the ladies in the list are some of the most gorgeous women around. My only reservation about the list, if I have the time to quickly finish my initial contribution, is the inclusion of former governors. You know, the culture of governorship in Nigeria, governors are emperors in their states. They are autocrats. It takes time to adjust to being members of a collective. We saw that with President Buhari. He was touted as a born-again Democrat in 2015. But we know what we suffered from him. He showed us pepper because he remained a military autocrat. Now, former governors are not likely to make good ministers. That was clearly demonstrated in the way he behaved in the National Assembly, in which he thought it was below the National Assembly to question him. Unfortunately, President Tinubu has included two of the most loquacious and cantankerous governors that we had, that's El-Rufai and Nyesom Wike. I hope that the president will have the skill, the sagacity to manage this man who has spent 8 years running wild and so on. What must be said for the governors, I must concede, is that they were very good governors. So they are likely to be able to also be good ministers. And two of them, Wike and Rufai, have been governors, federal ministers before. But it's always some danger in including governors who are used to dictating, directing.
So yes. Isn't that tantamount to you questioning what the how you started out saying, look, he has this now for choosing fantastic people to be in place. So if he's got not one, not two, but four of them who will have significant impact in government, so you're saying you're not sure about all of this, should have looked elsewhere.
It's required is more effective management of, because you have to mold all the members of the cabinet to think like the president. The president will have to do that. The chief of staff, that is his duty to make sure that everybody is conforming. You have the secretary to government. So ministers are not autonomous entities. You are not no longer a governor, so you must fit in. But that does not dissuade the fact that this is a very excellent cabinet.
So when you say it's an excellent cabinet and we'll still have some grounds to cover of the names, are you then saying it doesn't matter that no portfolios were attached to them, they'll do a good job wherever they find themselves? Is that your point?
People quibble a lot about nothing. Portfolios are usually not attached when they're going to the Senate. It is when they have come back, their first cabinet meeting, that most of the time they have their portfolio before them where they are seated. But you can see from the list that these are eminently competent people, architects, a professor from Harvard. Professor Musa is a current rector, a renowned civil and water engineer. You have architects, you have everybody there. I mean, so I do not see that the problem is whether they have been given portfolio or not. That does not matter.
Okay.
They will be given, and it's a matter of days. Let's focus on who have been selected and what they are likely to do with this kind of star-studded cabinet. What the government requires is good to go. The government is good to go. But we have where we are now in Nigeria. There's a lot of negatives arising from the removal of fuel subsidy, and this is what they are supposed to do. We need creative ministers. We need people who think out of the box to be able to get us out of the mess that we are now.
So, Mr. Nepo, do you share the same view on this portfolio matter?
Well, let's even start by the statement of having a star-studded team. You see, we can't continue this process of recycling men and women who did not have any stellar performance when they were in office. Just take the example. Wike was minister under Jonathan. Thereafter, he became governor. El-Rufai was minister under Obasanjo. Thereafter, he became governor. and you are bringing them back to become ministers? Is it that there is no more person in these states who could be tapped to come and offer service? You look at people who have already been elected senators, members of the House, you go and drag them out so that there'll be a vacancy there, you start talking of another election. What are the special qualities in these men and women, why they deserve to be taken away from the legislature, where they intended to go and to be made ministers? Now, on the issue of portfolio, I think we should have gotten to the stage in Nigeria where people should talk, with some measure of, experience. If I'm good, I'm not good in space travel. I've never been there. I don't know anything about it. I could be good to make suggestions about reforming the Ministry of Justice. I could tell you a few things about, even though I'm not a doctor, Ministry of Health, Agriculture. But it is important that you want to make Ezonyebere a minister. Put it there that you want to make me Minister for Agriculture. So that during, what is the idea of screening? You are screening me to go and recite the national pledge or national anthem. Or you are screening me in ask me who is the current governor of Jigawa State. How does that relate to the portfolio I'm taking? So even beyond screening in the Senate and or wherever, Nigerians ought to be screening through public opinion. Those persons, in terms of, I could have been saying, I know this man that is going to be Minister of Agriculture. I don't think, or he's super fit for it. So if you simply ask people, at some point, some of them will be asked to take a bow. Mark it somewhere. Some of these people who have been ministers, they have been A, B, C, D, most of these people will not even be able to look them in the face.
Well, we know that ministers really qualify for taking a bow. It's usually the former lawmakers. I mean, there are quite a significant number of them on this list. Former lawmakers, I think it's about 6 or 7 or so.
Good. So
former lawmakers.
Why would they even take a bow?
Even current lawmakers.
Because even the challenges Nigeria faces today, it's not the challenge of the Obasanjo days. It's not even the challenge of the era of the last president. Most of these issues that are coming out of the removal of fuel subsidy or unification of the exchange rate, they are novel things that you need to understand who exactly appreciates the issues and going forward. So that portfolio should have been attached so that the senators can ask appropriate questions and Nigerians like
Mr. Baja thinks that the reason why that is not done is, look, if the president can change his mind, saying, you know what, I didn't know some information about this person, so I think let's move him to this place. So he says if they attack those portfolios and then they go for screening and he changes his mind, is he going to send him back to screening?
No.
That's his explanation for that.
The president should get to the stage where he makes up his mind after evaluating a particular candidate. I'm sure there will be security reports, there will be all kinds of reports he will get about any individual. He says, I want this person as a minister. And by the time he considers all these reports, he now makes up his mind, say, you go to Ministry X. So the screening must be in a context. Otherwise, you will be screening people at large, nothing exactly in terms of concrete questions. And something came up. They're saying they may create new ministries. And here we are shouting about the cost of governance. Is it that they're going to merge existing ministries or that they are going to add to the numbers that we have? If it is addition to the numbers we have, then there's a huge challenge. We are rather increasing the costs rather than, reducing the cost of governance. And then also the issue of 7 women. I mean, the demand is a minimum of 35%. Okay, what we have now is about 25%. And we should also be sure that those people will be given opportunity to run concrete ministries. Saw the debate that came out about Minister of State, whether it's constitutionally recognized or not. Even though you talk about that all ministries are equal, there are A-list ministries. There are ministries that look a bit more weighty than others in terms of their impact on society and the economy as a whole.
Well, this is 28 names. Obviously, the constitutional requirement of one minister per state has not been met. And we've seen that even some states already have 2 names to them. So people are already saying, is it possible that the president might want to adopt the 42 names list, or is it going to be 36 names? But at the minimum, we know that the president
36.
must have 36 ministers, 1 from each state. What are your thoughts on that? The fact that it would seem that this is batch 1, so it's not like NYC list. Batch A, stream B.
So if some states are already getting 2, you can be sure it's going to be more than 36. And then it may even be more than 42 we've had before. Probably a good number of states may end up getting 2, and that's why the idea of new ministries is coming up. And so, like I said, it will increase the cost of governance. I would have said, focus more on quality. The cadre of people who are coming in as ministers than the numbers. Yes, there are a few of these ministers anybody can say, okay, we are thinking this person is likely going to health. He's almost headhunted. He was somewhere. He even refused the opportunity to get roll over his appointment, hoping that maybe he will come to Nigeria. Yes, we can identify 1, 2, 3, but a good number of them are the usual. Mr.
Onyekpere, you know, some people will disagree with you because you have pointed out 3 names from when you talk about usual, when you talked about people being recycled. From the examples that you gave, you mentioned Nyesom Wike, Nasir El-Rufai, and made reference to Dave Umahi, who is currently a senator.
And the former governor of Jigawa State,
so that's about 4 of them who are the 4 governors. And then the other names who you also referred to, I mean, the people who had appointments outside of this country, very good appointments at that, and we're doing very well in their field, maybe about another 3 or 4. So if we're at discountenancing this list based on the 4 whom you've mentioned, why can't we also give the list kudos based on this other list?
You cannot give kudos. What I pointed out also could possibly be 2, 3, or 4 persons, okay, who fall into that category. But
how well do we know that?
Hold on. The bulk of the others are unproven. All right? We are all living in Nigeria. You know very good lawyers, doctors, engineers, people who have proven themselves because you belong to the media in a number of competencies, in a number of places they've been before. You see, at this level, you don't become a minister to learn on the job. At the kind of hardship Nigerians are going through, you must have proven yourself somewhere, not simply because you were a good party man, not simply because you held the election campaign. Yes, these are very good qualities, but you must have proven yourself in bringing concrete solutions to real life problems. And that is what we need now, whether it's in education, whether it is in health, whether it's in the terms of the economy, who is going to rein in the inflation, who is going to give us a naira, promise us that in the next 2 years, we may come back to maybe between 400 and 500 to the dollar. These are the kind of practical things we need. It's not just enough. Even professorship doesn't make so much sense these days. It's not just enough that you're a professor. It's not just enough that you're a practical man. And that's why I am saying, if you are going to be the Minister of Finance or in charge of the economy, I need to hear you tell us that today is 790 or 800 to the dollar. What practical steps, short term, medium term, long term, so that we know what to hold you accountable for? You can tell us that it will be difficult, like we've said, in the next 6 months, but from the first quarter of next year, second quarter, we should begin to see the naira appreciate. We could begin to see Nigeria refining petroleum products at home. Because you know the idea of, the oil refineries will be revamped first quarter, it kept on dribbling us. So we need to see somebody in charge of petroleum resources and ask him straight to his face, do you know how functional the refineries are today? He says, yes, I know. What do you plan to do with them? Are you going to sell them off? Are you going to rehabilitate them? What is the timeline? Practical questions. It's no longer like you carry somebody like me now and dump me into to say, go and manage the refineries. What do I know about refineries? I could answer a few questions which you think are good, but that doesn't solve the problem.
Okay, well, let's go to our guest who is on Zoom now. Prof, I was just going to ask you about some of the names we've seen so far. I mean, and this problem of portfolio, you have said it's much ado about nothing, but, you know, this is criticism that has come every 4 years, especially when we have ministers, that, you know, at some point, when we have service chiefs, we know that they're going to be, we already know what portfolio they're going to go, I mean, by the very appointment that is made, and, you know, the screening is done accordingly. Why is it so difficult? Because we hear this every now and again that this will help the senators in their job of screening the ministerial nominees. Why is it so difficult to attach portfolios so that, you know, a thorough job of where these people will be going will be clear?
Yes, I agree with you that I agree with the former speaker as well, that portfolios should have been included. It should have improved screening. It is what the difference we make in logic between sufficient and necessary. It is sufficient but not necessary condition. So, because in the United States system that we are copying, people are screened on the basis of the portfolio they are going. But then it's not done at once. That's just to answer the question about why this standard. People go to Congress to be screened at different times. So, and appointments are made at different times. So I agree that portfolios will have helped, will have improved, enhanced screening. Let me make some very quick points about recycling. That is the nature of politics. If you don't want recycling, politicians are recycled. The president himself is a recycled person. Are you going to stop recycling? When you don't have politics? Biden is 80.
Is it fair to say he's, pardon me, Prof, is it right to say he's recycled because he was elected? If he was elected as president, isn't it different from when you now have to nominate people as ministers?
Yes, when you make people as ministers, what I'm pointing to you is that experience reinforces experience. That is the nature of administrative competence. You don't have to bring people new all the time. And you talk about cost of democracy. What is the acceptable cost? People just talk speculatively. What is the cost of democracy? Tell me what the cost. If democracy is expensive, try autocracy. The reality is that democracy in Nigeria is expensive because of corruption, because of waste. The kind of waste that you see, and I dare say, in Akpabio's convoy, going to work on his office and having dispatch riders and all that. What is that for? In the midst of this hardship that we are going, our leaders are not sensitive to our needs. They are better learn from what is going on in Niger, in Sahel. You have to be sensitive. You can't be showing off when people cannot even ride and walking to work. In Lagos, traffic has dried up because people cannot afford to bring their cars on the road.
So, but Prof, is it out of place for people to say, when some say, look, we're cautious, probably cautiously optimistic, maybe, because in this same country of ours, we've seen professors who were returning officers, and we saw how the elections also went. Some of them facing the law for manipulating elections. So if people say, well, we're cautious, we'll just wait to see the results, is it out of place for people to have that kind of impression?
I didn't get what you are making about professors. Let me say that.
Not yourself, Prof. I mean, we know you. You've not been a returning officer. We're talking about professors who were returning officers for elections, and some of them facing the courts for manipulating results of elections. So when, I mean, Mr. Nyekwe also said, look, even professors too, you have to raise questions.
How many of them do you know? I mean, generalizations are so common in Nigeria. A returning officer is not the one who brings results.
No, but Prof, the professor there are professors who are before the law now for manipulating elections.
Let us not trivialize professorship, but like the other man says, it's not about professorship. It is about professorship. The professorship means something. If you are architect, if you are an engineer, it means that you have some qualification. So nobody should trivialize any other profession. That is, the person sit and say, for me, professors don't matter. Professor Patel is a professor of global health in Harvard. Who said
No. I don't think he said professors don't matter. If I understand this point, he says, look, that even professors too, he's not a professor of space science. If you don't know anything about that field, they can't put you in that field.
In any case, who is anybody to start judging when people, the performance, was Wike not a good governor? What you can know was El-Rufai not a good governor. And if you bring that experience, I don't want them there.
I thought you just said a while ago that some of these governors need to be managed because they have this, the way they run their states.
But you are not the president. You are not the one who contested the election. You are not the one who want to seek re-election. The president needs both the good and the bad. There's this debate in philosophy between Plato and Aristotle. Do we deal with intellectual technocrats or we deal with people with political sagacity? There is room for technocrats, there is room for politicians who will do the field work, the grassroots work for the president. The president has his eye on the future, on the present, and the past. It's a composite. You compensate people who work for you, you bring technocrats who will do the work now, and you also put politicians who will be doing grassroots work for your re-election. People must understand context before the comments.
All right, before I go to Mr. quick one. So,
the practical thing is like all I'm hearing is politics from the other side. Nigerians are in dire straits. People are hungry.
It's the professor of international politics.
People are hungry. People try to walk 10 kilometers a day. People are ill. They can't afford to pay the doctor or to buy medicine. So we are beyond looking at re-election when you have not even served your 4 years, when you are not even sure whether Nigeria will survive the 4 years, because the way things are, look around. I have some jitters around me. Look around countries around us. Push. People taking over power illegally, unconstitutionally. What are the indicators? What are the facts that led to this? Okay, what you have to understand is that things are so bad in Nigeria now. So the best thing is to, first of all, get the economy working, get the administration of justice working, get the bandits and the insurgents, throw them away and let people go back to the farms. When you finish doing this, then you can begin to talk of re-election and the politics.
People say that this will still be solved through politics. These problems which you have talked about will still be solved through politics. You talk about politics being the greatest good to the greatest number.
It's not about politics in the way we are discussing it.
Exactly.
It is about getting people who know what the issues are and can bring workable solutions, practical solutions to go and face these things, and not somebody who will be pontificating. Because let's even see it. These two governors who were mentioning, is it not in Kaduna State? Can we count the number of body bags? People that were lost in the last 4 years in Kaduna State. Is that an example of good governance? The kind of things that happened in Rivers State in terms of even the elections, everybody saw it beyond asking me to prove in a court of law tribunal. We are all Nigerians. Are we happy? Is that what we want replicated at the national level? Maybe going about with bands, singing? Is that the level Nigeria is today that somebody will be saying this?
We'll talk more about this when we return in just a moment. Stay on with us.
Well, thank you for staying with us. Professor Femi Otunbajo, Mr. Eze Oyekwe is still with us on the program as we analyze this ministerial nominees list. A total of 28 people on that list, 4 of them former governors, 7 women, that's 25% of that list. A good number of them with various forms of experience. So we're taking a look at it and the quantum of work ahead of them. And let me go to Mr. Oyekwe on this one. Just specifically speaking now, there's been so much said about that list, but I'd like to know what is your main, would I say, grouse or issue with that list? Are there specific names that you expected to make that list that you're disappointed that they're not there, perhaps because of their track record and what they bring to bear? Are there names you would love to be expunged from that list? What are those names? Particularly if you could give the list a rating for the 28 names we have so far, what would you rate that list so we can better, interrogate the issues?
I don't think it will be good for me to stand here and start calling specific names to say, expunge this or bring this one back. I'm not the president. The president has made his choice. But what I am saying is that the recycling part of it, I am not happy with it. Because there are other Nigerians who can be asked to come on board and contribute to the process of national development. Those who are already serving in the National Assembly, leave them there to continue, because what they plan to be are legislators. Then the other people who are simply politicians, we must interrogate what they bring to the table in terms of what special qualities, what problem-solving qualities are they bringing, because this is not a period we could say, let's continue with business as usual. The country is in so much difficulty. Yes, I acknowledge a couple of people on that list who I can say they will be round pegs in round holes if where we're expecting them to be, that the president eventually assigns them there. But generally, close to 50% of the names on the list are just average names. And Nigeria does not require just average people these days, because the challenges are quite extreme. And it's a matter of life and death for a good number of Nigerians, people who have to trek 10, 15 kilometers a day, people who have to go to bed hungry. So they need to be convinced that these people who are coming can really help solve their daily existential challenges. So
following up with that one, about maybe names that should have been there, would you, if you're in a position to advise opposition parties, we see a member of the PDP, or would I say the G5, former Governor Nyesom Wike on that list. Do you think it's a good idea for opposition parties to also perhaps be a part if a hand of fellowship is stretched to them? And I'm talking the Labour Party, the mainstream PDP, if I could use that term. Would you think it's a good idea to have them on that list? Perhaps if you have people that bring on board very good skills, very good track record, do you think it would be a good idea to include them perhaps in batch B of that list?
Very well. In as much as one is a Nigerian and is amenable to working with the president, okay, and he has some good skills and qualities that he's bringing on the table, I think the president should go across party lines and select them. Even the idea of headhunting, go outside Nigeria, see Nigerians who are doing very well, who can help us solve the problem, bring them. It is not about political parties. Elections should be over by now. Nigerians are looking forward to solutions of their problems. If you recall, even during the Obasanjo era, the first time he came on board, 99, he had to, take ministers from across the aisle. Right. He didn't restrict it to his own political party alone, because the whole idea was to get Nigeria together and then begin to solve problems. So as far as I'm concerned, anybody who can solve my problems, I don't mind whether he bears the toga of a Labour Party, PDP, APC, or whichever party at all. The central issue for me is, can you assist in solving these problems that I have before me?
The question now will be whether or not they'll be willing to be a part of that government if a hand of fellowship has been stretched to them. Let me go to Professor Tubanjo now, who joins us virtually. And your opening comments, Prof, still rings in my head. You call this an incredible mosaic of the very best men and women, a star-studded list, masterclass in cabinet crafting, and you said the president's knack for working with the best of talent shines through. And something that struck me was you said he combines compensatory interests with competence and futurologist, essentially an eye on election. I know a lot of people may cut that part out and play it over and over again and just try to think what's going through your mind. But let's be futuristic in this conversation. And I want to ask you, do you see a competent Minister of Works, for example, in that list? You see a competent Minister of Finance? You see a competent Minister of Power, a competent Minister of Agriculture? Because those are some of the major issues we face, and we need to hit the ground running, as they say.
Well, I'm not sure I got the hang of your question. The sound is not doing too well with me here. But I understand that within this list, it is for those who think that there's something wrong with it to point out that Mr. A or Madam B is not competent. That's the basic point. What I see here, I find it very amazing. Last time I saw that was during the Babangida regime when technocrats were appointed to fill positions. Of course, but there were still soldiers who were there who were also included. But what you find here is that there's an attempt to balance, even where you are pandering to politics, there's an attempt to balance some quality, the quality of the people. You look at the governors, for example, that I have spoken against, they are still good governors. Banderu, Umahi, they were some of the best developmental governors that we had in this last dispensation. So you have to balance it. And of course, they work for the president. You know, if you look at the list, I'm talking of, you look at Bella Angel, a trained doctor. You have Anatu Musawa, a barista from Khalid, Aberdeen, oil and gas, and all that. You can only talk from what you see. There are people here who are a former Stella Otete is a former director of Nexi. There are people here, you can go on throughout this list and see people who have accomplished something. And our prayer is that they will bring that competence into accomplishing goodness for Nigeria. Nigerians need good governance now, more than ever before. We are trying to reform the economic system. It is at a very high cost to us. We are paying dearly for it. But we are ready to bear the sacrifice for it if there's the indication that we are going to get good governance. The cabinet is the first level indication, and it's a very good one, I dare say.
Well, we'll see about that in the coming days, particularly when they begin work, and quite a Herculean task before them. Mr. Onyekpere touched on a very important point, just as he answered his last question when he said some lawmakers in that list planned to be lawmakers and hence they were not supposed to be there. I wonder how novel this is in our recent democratic history. When we recall that the immediate past speaker, as the 9th Assembly closed, also, resigned his position, though he had been re-elected. So what are the implications of this, perhaps, should in case it becomes a trend in the near future for a new administration to shop for its cabinet members from Parliament? Professor Tubanjo, that's for you. Okay.
There's nothing wrong with that. It happens everywhere. People who move from one position to the other. I know that in the United States, sometimes people move from Congress to be secretaries of commerce, of state, or whatever. I do not see that there's a problem, because what it does is it opens up avenues for somebody else to come in a by-election. And that person elected, selected by the president, must have been seen to have something to offer. First and foremost, it's somebody who understands the grassroots, because they had gone through the process of election, interacted with people, and know their needs. So that is an advantage of selecting somebody who already gone through the process of election. There's a lot
Prof, pardon me if I may come in there. Can we say that, these appointees, these nominees, didn't know that they were going to be nominated into the president's cabinet positions? And we can also say that the plan to filling their positions when they take up their appointments will come at a cost to taxpayers' money following by-elections.
I don't understand why is that you consider that a problem. How can somebody know that you will made the minister? The ministerial situation is a very complex, competitive situation. Until your name is announced, you are not sure. Even if they tell you that the president is looking your way, you cannot be sure that you get it. What we were taught in primary school is that a bird in hand is more than 10, 20 in the bush. So if somebody goes in and says, I want to be, I want to be a parliamentarian and goes through the process of that is his primary ambition. And then, of course, if he's considered to be a minister, but I quite honestly, if I want to be honest about it, that's not a swap that anybody should make. You have a tenure of 4 years as a legislator. The ministerial appointment has no tenure because the president can sack you at his pleasure. So I don't see why people should exchange their elective office for an executive office. But that is their choice. But that's not to say that they have done anything wrong.
Well, Prof, I'm just wondering how reminiscent this is of Section 8412 that caused not a little stir during the primaries in 2022. But let me come to you now, Mr. Onyekpere. It's as if we can't talk enough about, the need for the executive to attach portfolio to the ministerial nominees. If it's, throwing up this quantum of conversation here, I wonder why it wasn't much of a concern for members of parliament. The senators have been saying that they're going to give the nominees some rigorous screening. So what does it say about the character of this parliament if it's not a problem? If the Senate president is not saying, look, we send this back and insist that the executive attaches portfolios to it such that we can build something on something. Mr. Onyekpere, that's for you.
Well, if you recall, the Constitution did not make it mandatory that the president must attach the portfolios to each of the names. So what we have been arguing is that not everything must be written in law. Some things are commonsensical. Nobody taught me that if I make some amala or fufu, I should put it in my mouth. Why shouldn't I put it in my nose? There's no way it is written. But some of these things are commonsensical. But the National Assembly is dominated by the majority party where the president comes from, just like in the other dispensations. So you don't expect these politicians elected as senators or members of the House to begin to issue direct queries to the president in terms of saying, why didn't you do X or Y? But I think going forward, since there are still opportunities for constitutional amendment, that should be strictly put in as a requirement, because we don't even need that in the first place for us to do good if we are very conscious of the fact that we need to make the nation go forward. So in a sense, I know the legislators will have wanted that portfolio attached, but since the president didn't attach it, many of them cannot summon the courage to query the president to say, this is what you do. But if push comes to shove, the president can say, well, I'm not violating any law. The Constitution did not make it mandatory for me. So that is a critical challenge.
I know that the jury is still out there for some on the performance of previous ministers in the previous government, President Buhari's government. And I think it's important to maybe learn from some of the things we saw then. I know we had challenges with the Minister of Power, Minister of Agriculture, the President. Well, it was rare to see him do that, former president that is, but at least he sacked some ministers. Whether or not there's been an outcome of investigation or whatever it is they did wrong is another thing entirely. But Professor Otuba just said that they are good to go. For him, they are good to go. And I won't go over those words he used to describe this list again. But what do you see standing in the way of these ministerial nominees who eventually we expect will be ministers, barring any changes? What do you see standing in their way from the experience of the last administration?
Well, I see nothing standing in their way to be approved by the Senate. They are likely going to be
standing in their way to perform as ministers.
There's already
in whatever ministry they're in. Pardon me, I meant
the president and the National Assembly.
Pardon me, if you can hear me. What I meant was,
in essence, the major challenge they will have is being able to address the issues in the portfolios that they will be giving. So, if you are made the Minister of Agriculture, Nigerians expect that you should improve food production. You should also collaborate with the security agencies to make sure that the farms are safe for the farmers to go. And the whole idea of value chain of agriculture is fully explored and exploited to put more food on the table, some for exports and some for raw materials for industries. So in every sector, the major issue will be how they work with other stakeholders to address specific challenges. Of course, you saw during the last days of the Buhari administration how a minister in charge of aviation just simply ignored every stakeholder and was doing his own thing until he had to leave there. And those issues and question marks that he left are still hanging. And whoever is coming in will have to address those challenges. You saw the person who eventually became the Minister of Education the last time, the kind of issues that he left. And it turned out to be that he didn't even understand the sector in the first place. He wasn't a professional in the sector. He was simply put there. Even when the sector was burning, he appeared to be less concerned. It was even the minister in charge of labor that was coming to dialogue with ASU and other persons. So, in essence, the real challenge they have are the sectoral challenges that will be assigned to them. It's not about screening. I don't see the current Senate telling any of them to say, we will not approve you. They will be approved.
Yeah.
But it is when they get to work that we'll now know how competent they are.
Well, Mr. Oyebere, so that's what I was trying to clarify. My question was not about what will stand in their way from being approved. It's what will stand in their way from performing in whatever ministry they are put in. But let me go to Professor Tumbaja, because he made that statement that they are good to go, even though he also identified some nominees who he described as loquacious and quite cantankerous. So, Prof, from experience, maybe from recent experience now of the Buhari administration, what are the major challenges ministers usually face, perhaps in their ministries, in terms of the red tapes and all of that, that we need to watch out for if we want to perform in this government?
Well, essentially, ministers, every minister faces the problem of budgetary limitations. No matter how much ideas you have, they have to be tailored towards what is available for your government, for the ministry to spend. Ministers face the challenge of poor oversight. That is, if you have a president who is not a hard-working president, who is not interested in working, who doesn't read more than a paragraph or two a day, then you're going to have a problem of presenting your case properly. Of course, you have the challenge of the civil service that you are working with. You must carry them along. You must make sure that they are on the same table with you, that they key into the agenda, because your own agenda must be the agenda of the president. No minister has an autonomous agenda. You don't go to the ministry and say, I'm going to build a road from Guagalada to Lokoja. No, it's not a business. It is the president that tells you what I want to do with roads, what I want to do with water, and so on. And it's your own business to go and disaggregate that agenda into programs, policies, and programs. So you need a president that pays attention to ideas. You need a cabinet that is working together. You need proper funding. You need technocracy. The civil service in many countries runs the country. Quite honestly, ministers are surplus to requirements. You can run a country without ministers. But you need that political contact between the president and the ministry. So they are like ambassadors of the president in the ministry. They sit in their offices. Most of the work is done by the technocrats. And so the ministers can read the mind of the president because they have access to the president. Permanent secretaries, directors don't have the same access. So they need to make sure that their civil service is with them and work with the civil service. If you have a bad minister who is also not reading, who is not creative, who has no vision of what should happen, then you have a crisis. But of course, that's why you have performance evaluation in the Secretary to Government's office and the Chief of Staff. So there must be no shyness in removing such ministers. So it depends on the president. The president is key to the performance of the minister. The monitoring system of the presidency to see how ministers are performing. It's very important to the outcomes.
Prof, in this case, if you say ministers are surplus to requirement and, you can run without the ministers. I wonder how we can tie it to your earlier view that, the mulling of extra ministries and the increase to cost of governance should, we have a complete 42-man cabinet is not such a problem to cost of governance. But don't respond to that. Let me quickly come to Mr. Onyekpere. So much has been said about, the prowess of the president to assemble, a competent team from his time as Lagos State governor, but very little has been said, about what his style would be should we have erring ministers or ministers who are unable to deliver. I'd like you to speak to that. I don't know if we have experience. We can refer to experience from the last administration. Kadi was talking about some ministers who were sacked and no reason was provided for that. But what can we expect, if that happens to be the case along the line, in this administration? Mr. Onyekpere, that's for you.
I expect Mr. President to appoint ministers with milestones and deliverables, the achievements that the government is expecting in each sector, and they should be time-bound. So if you are given an assignment and you expected to deliver so much in year 1, year 2, year 3, if you are unable to deliver within the time frame, I expect there should be some review, there should be some course correction or calling to order. Or if there is a clear case of misapplication or misappropriation of resources or mismanagement of resources, I also expect the president to come intervene and maybe remove the person and forward his name to the authorities for investigation and prosecution. So if you judge from what has happened in the past, starting from Obasanjo's days, ministers are liable to be removed if they don't perform well, and replaced with persons who the president thinks can deliver on the mandate. And also, it is important to put these issues more contextually. It's not strictly so much, yes, the president has made some promises to Nigerians through his manifesto that was done during the campaigns. There are also national policies in some of these critical areas, whether it's in education, whether it's in health. Unless we are changing those policies altogether, those national policies should also help, to drive the agenda of the ministers and the agenda of the president. So Nigerians will also be looking forward to, for instance, if it is health, what have we signed up to in the Sustainable Development Goals? If it is in water, whether it's in education, some of those clear benchmarks that have been existing beyond tenures of presidents. So these are the kind of things that Mr. President will use to assess the ministers. And Nigerians also, this is beyond the president, because the people that are serving should also be in a position to contribute to the process. If you have a minister that the president is so happy with, and then all Nigerians are saying, this man is not serving us well, then there is a challenge, a disconnect between what the president wants and what the people want. So I think the president should listen more to the streets, to the people, to find out whether the ministers are serving them well, and that should be the benchmark he will use to either say continue or please depart from my cabinet.
So you don't have, there's no problem with the intendment of the law requiring him to submit list of ministers within 60 days, is there?
No, there is nothing wrong with that. In fact, if I have my way, that ministerial list should come within 1 month. Because if we still have this system, like I pointed out, you were declared president-elect late February or 1st in March. You had March, you had April, you had May up till 29th, in fact, the whole of May. So you had 3 months after being sworn in. I assume, after being declared president-elect, I assume that considering the grueling campaigns, you could take 1 week or 2, lock up yourself and sleep very well. When you wake up in the 3rd week, you start your consultations. That in fact, there is nothing wrong by, after being sworn in and after the parties, you rest for a day or 2. The next day, you're on national television or you go to the Senate and hand over these papers because you've had 3 months to do consultation among your party members.
All right, gentlemen, we have to thank you for coming on. Eze Onyekpere is a lawyer and the lead director, Center for Social Justice. We also had Professor Femi Otunbanjo of International Politics and Strategic Studies, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you.